I wasn't going to do this episode today. I had something else planned. I had notes, I had research, I was going to be clever and analytical and talk about true crime on this episode for an episode of We Saw the Devil. Something that was manageable, right? And then I woke up this morning, I started my job, I drank my Celsius because Celsius is better than coffee. I sat down on my computer like I do every day, and then early afternoon I saw what happened in Minneapolis. And guys, I'm going to be honest, I can't. I just can't. I cannot sit here and pretend that anything else really matters right now. I can't just perform normalcy while the federal government is murdering people in the streets. And I cried. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to admit it because I think it's really honest. It's important to be honest about what this does to us as humans in this country right now. I sat at my kitchen table at my computer and I watched that video. By late afternoon, there were many angles of that video, and I cried like a fucking child. And look, I've been doing true crime for years. I've, on We Saw the Devil, I've covered some of the most horrific shit that human beings have ever done to one another. I've looked at crime scene photos that would make most people vomit. I thought that I was past the point where anything could really crack me open in that way anymore. I think a lot of you are aware that I was an engineer for Twitter. I was a BI engineer for Twitter, and part of my job was, TLDR is that they hired me to work with a French marketing. Twitter acquired a French marketing company, and I had to set up filters and things like that. Specifically, one of them being for ISIS, so it could be reported to both Department of Homeland Security and the French equivalent. I have seen more ISIS execution videos that you can count. And it's horrific and awful. And I'm not trying to trauma Olympics anyone. But today, when I watched that ICE agent in front of that woman's car, a woman, by the way, named Renee Nicole Good, 37 years old, wife, mother, someone's daughter, someone's whole fucking world. And I watched him shoot her in the face point blank 3 times through the windshield while she tried to drive away, while she was just trying to leave. And this is the part that makes me lose it. I watched not only her wife sob on the pavement, breaking down with their dog and screaming and crying, but then then we all got to see the Trump administration call her a domestic terrorist. I watched Kristi Noem, that dead-eyed automaton who shoots her own dogs, stand in front of the cameras in Texas, 1,000 miles away from where this woman's blood was still wet on the pavement, and call it an act of domestic terrorism. I watched the Department of Homeland Security put out a statement saying the agent was fearing for his life, as if we didn't all just watch the video showing that was complete horseshit. I watched the President of the United States, and I use that title with profound disgust, go on his sad little Twitter knockoff and call the dead woman's grieving widow a professional agitator. And I felt something that I haven't felt in a very long time. Something beyond anger, something beyond grief, something that feels a lot more like the last fraying threads of whatever naive faith I had in this country's capacity for shame finally snapping. And look, God, I desperately I hope that this is the wake up call that our country needs. I really do. I hope people see this video and something breaks open in their atrophied consciousness. I hope it makes them finally realize what we're dealing with here, what this administration is, what it's always been, what the plan was, and what every fucking person with 2 brain cells to rub together warned them it would become. But I'm not naive. I've been paying attention too long to be naive. And I know what's going to happen. I've already seen it happening. I made the mistake against every instinct of self-preservation of looking at Twitter this morning, looking at Fox News, looking at the fetid swamp of right-wing bullshit social media, and I dove into the comments. There are people in this country, millions of them, tens of millions, who are watching that same video, watching a woman get murdered in broad daylight, watching her die on camera in high definition, and they are cheering. They're saying she deserved it. They're calling her a rioter, an agitator, a terrorist. They're posting flag emojis and thin blue line bullshit and saying, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, that's not the most sociopathic fucking response imaginable to watching someone's mother and partner get executed. They're celebrating. And I need to speak to you people right now because I'm done. I am so fucking done. I'm done being polite. I'm done being civil. I'm done pretending that we can have a reasonable conversation with people who have abandoned all reason, abandoned decency, abandoned every principle that they ever claimed to hold to begin with. If you watched that video, if you saw an unarmed woman get shot in the face while trying to drive away from a confrontation that she didn't start, and your first instinct, your gut reaction, the thing that rose up from whatever fetid swamp you call a soul, was to defend the shooter, you're a monster. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that as hyperbole. I say that as clinical observation. You are a morally defective human being. You're a disgrace to the human species. You are what happens when tribalism completely devours a person's capacity for basic human empathy. I don't care if that offends you. I don't care if you unsubscribe. I don't give a shit if you leave a 1-star review calling me a radical leftist or whatever thought terminating cliche you've been programmed to deploy out of your mouth. You are a disgusting, ignorant, boot-licking piece of shit, and somewhere deep down in whatever shriveled remnant of a conscience that you haven't completely murdered, you know it. You know that to be true. You have abandoned every single principle you have ever claimed to believe in. And you know what? Let's just take a nice little stroll through the hypocrisy really quick. You know why? Because I find it genuinely fascinating from an anthropological standpoint here. Every time you've said you're pro-life, lie. Every time you've waved that little flag and gotten misty-eyed about freedom, lie. Every time you've cited the Constitution, that little document that you've clearly never actually read but love to cite it, lie. Every time you've complained about government overreach and tyranny and the importance of the Second Amendment to protect citizens from an oppressive state, lie, lie, lie. Every time you've said due process or innocent until proven guilty or pretended to care about the rule of law, that's all bullshit. Because here's the thing about principles. And I realize that this is a somewhat advanced concept for people who get their worldview from Facebook memes. Principles are supposed to apply even when it's inconvenient. They're supposed to apply even when the victim is someone you don't like. That's what makes them principles instead of just tribal preferences dressed up in fancy language. You don't have principles. You never did. It was always just aesthetics, just vibes, just, team sports that ended up with a body count. You don't care about life. You don't care about freedom. You don't care about the Constitution. You care about power. You care about hurting people that you've been told to hate. You only care about your team winning. And then you've defined winning as causing maximum suffering to whatever designated out group you decide. And if an agent of the federal government executes an unarmed woman on camera in broad daylight on a public street in front of witnesses, and your response is good, then you are exactly what you've always accused everyone else of being. You are the authoritarian. You are the fascist. You are the fucking brown shirt cheering from the crowd. You're the person that would have looked the other way in every single dark chapter of history. You're the person who would have reported Anne Frank for the reward money and then slept soundly that night. You're the person who would have attended lynchings as entertainment in the South because you know what? You're already fucking doing it. You're just doing it on Twitter now or on Threads or whatever social media you cheer and clap with glee as you watch people with a different mindset or view as you get executed. I'm from the South. I grew up around conservatives. I've worked with them. I went to church with them. I have friends who are conservatives. I have family members who voted for Trump, some of them twice. And I've spent years trying to understand them, trying to find some sort of common ground, trying to believe that beneath the Fox News bullshit and talking points, that there are shared values that we could build on as Americans. I'm done. If this is you, if you watched that video and your response was anything other than horror, we are not the same. We don't have a difference of opinion. We don't have just a mere political disagreement. We have a difference of basic humanity. You can tell yourself whatever story you need to sleep at night. You can tell yourself you're a patriot, that you support law and order, that you're one of the good ones. But I know what you are. History will know what you are. And deep down, in whatever part of your soul you haven't deadened with right wing propaganda and spite, you know too. This is Red, White, and Bruised. I'm Robin, and today, for roughly the next hour, we're going to talk about the murder of Renee Nicole Good. What happened, what it means, who she was, what the government is lying about, what the law actually says, and why this absolutely must be a turning point for this country. And yes, I'm angry. I'm going to curse. I'm going to say things that would make my grandmother clutch her pearls, because I think politeness in the face of atrocity this awful is its own form of complicity. So let's fucking go. Before we get into what happened this morning, just quick couple things. If you're interested in following the podcast, and this feels so dirty to even do this. First of all, guys, I am not actually even editing this podcast episode because I just want to get it out, and I'm angry and I'm fucking exhausted. I am tired. And so this is going to be very minimally edited, which is unlike my other episodes, obviously. So if you don't like it, tough titty, said the kitty. Beyond that, you're listening to Red, White, and Bruised, courtesy of We Saw the Devil. I'm your host, Robin. Please follow the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, you can do that at We Saw the Devil Podcast on Instagram, We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, all of the other regular places. And then WeSawTheDevil.com is the email. If you want to send me an email, message, complaint, concern, compliment, whatever, you can email me directly at info@WeSawTheDevil.com. So let's talk more about this. I want to start off with some context because this killing didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in the middle of what the Trump administration is calling with, the kind of self-congratulatory grandiosity that would embarrass a Roman emperor. It's the largest immigration enforcement operation in American history. And understanding that operation is essential to understanding why Renee Nicole Good is dead. For the past several days, the Department of Homeland Security has been flooding Minneapolis, St. Paul area with federal agents, like absolutely flooding. We're talking approximately 2,000 agents and officers, ICE, Border Control, federal marshals. I mean, probably some guys from alphabet agencies that we've never even heard of, all descending on a metropolitan area that until this week was primarily known for just being cold as hell and having great health care. They're calling it Operation Metro Surge. And according to ICE acting director Todd Lyons, a man whose title sounds like, something from a young adult dystopian novel, it's the largest immigration operation ever in American history. Bigger than anything at the actual border. And they're deploying it in Minnesota in January when it's approximately negative fuck degrees outside. Now, a rational person might ask, why? Why Minneapolis? Why now? Is there some kind of massive wave of undocumented immigration happening in the frozen tundra of the upper Midwest that I somehow missed? The answer is obviously no. Obviously not. This isn't about immigration enforcement in any meaningful sense. This is political theater with a budget and a body count. The official justification involves allegations of fraud in Somali-owned child care centers. There have been claims, and I want to be very precise here, largely unsubstantiated claims promoted heavily by right-wing media that some childcare providers in the Somali community have been defrauding federal assistance programs. These allegations have been investigated. Minnesota state investigators looked into several of the childcare centers featured in a viral video that's been making the rounds on conservative social media. And you know what they found? That the centers were, quote, operating as expected. Operating as expected. The investigators looked and said, yeah, this seems fine. But that hasn't stopped the Trump administration from using these allegations as a pretext for what is essentially a military occupation of an American city. At a cabinet meeting last month, Trump, and I want you to hear this, called Somali residents garbage. He said, and I'm quoting, "I don't want them in my country." He said, and I'm quoting, "I don't want them in our country." He called American residents garbage. And then he sent 2,000 armed federal agents to terrorize their communities. Let's also note the obvious political dimension here, because I know everyone is thinking it. Minneapolis is represented by Ilhan Omar, a Black, Muslim, immigrant woman who Republicans have been demonizing for years. Tim Walz, who just ran for vice president on the ticket that beat Trump in the popular vote, again, just had to remind you, Tim Walz was on the ticket that won the popular vote because bless America, right? Electoral college. This is political retribution dressed up as law enforcement. Let us be real. They're not targeting Minneapolis because of immigration statistics. They're targeting Minneapolis because of who lives there and who represents them. This is punitive. This is vindictive. This is what fascism looks like when it has any semblance of a budget. So that's the backdrop to this. 2,000 federal agents crawling through neighborhoods like an occupying army, conducting what they euphemistically call targeted operations. Community members organizing legal observer networks because they're terrified of what their own government might do to them. People are afraid to go to work, afraid to take their kids to school, afraid to leave their homes. And if you saw today, Minneapolis schools, as of tomorrow, have been canceled because ICE agents are all over schools. And this is what America looks like, you guys know. Like, this is what we've become. This is what it looks like now. And this is what was happening in Minneapolis when Renee Nicole Good woke up on Wednesday morning. Say her name, Renee Nicole Good. Let's start this by establishing some facts. Exactly what happened yesterday, January 7th, 2026. And I'm going to be very precise here because precision matters when the government is lying to us all. This incident occurred at about 9:30 a.m. Yesterday morning in a residential neighborhood in South Minneapolis. The area is near East 34th Street and Portland Avenue. If you know Minneapolis, and I realize most of my listeners don't live there, I don't either, but that is about, well, it's actually less than a mile from where George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin in May of 2020. Same city, same kind of neighborhood, same story of law enforcement violence captured on video. Redux. ICE agents were in the area conducting operations, and we don't know exactly what they were doing or who they were targeting, but they were there. Multiple vehicles, multiple officers, doing what they've been doing all week, terrorizing the community under the guise of immigration enforcement. According to multiple eyewitnesses and eyewitness accounts and video evidence, and this is important because we have receipts here, a woman named Renee Nicole Good was in the area with her wife. They had stopped to observe what was happening, to document, to be witnesses. And I need to be absolutely clear about who Renee Nicole Good was because the government is working overtime to make sure that you think she was something that she wasn't. Renee Nicole Good was 37 years old. She had a wife. She had a 6-year-old child who was at school that morning, waiting to be picked up, completely unaware that their mother was about to be murdered by a federal agent. She'd recently moved to the Minneapolis area. According to her mother, Donna Ganger, Renee was not involved in protests. She was not an activist. She was not some professional agitator or Antifa super soldier or whatever the fuck they're calling people this week. Her mother told the Minnesota Star Tribune, and I want to read this exactly as she said it, she was probably terrified. Renee was one of the kindest people I've ever known. She was extremely compassionate. She's taken care of people all her life. She was loving, forgiving, and affectionate. She was an amazing human being. That's who we're talking about. A kind, compassionate, amazing person, a wife, a mother, and someone who spent her life taking care of other people. And now she's dead because she stopped to witness and film federal agents terrorizing people. She was in a car, a dark SUV, and something happened. We still don't have the complete clarity on exactly how the confrontation began, but what we know with sickening certainty at this point is how it ended. Multiple videos have emerged showing what happened, and there's at least that I've seen 3 different angles. This has been documented from multiple perspectives. It's not speculation. It's not hearsay. It's on fucking film. The videos show Renee's car stopped on a snowy, icy street. ICE agents approach. There are at least 3 agents visible. 3. One agent goes to the driver's side and attempts to open the door. He's aggressive. Witnesses heard agents yelling, "Get out of the fucking car." He reaches into the vehicle through the window. Whatever he's doing, y'all, it's not de-escalation. It's not calm. It's aggressive and threatening. The car begins to back up, and according to every single witness account, Renee was trying to turn around. She was trying to leave. The vehicle was not accelerating toward any agent. It was moving away, and she was trying to flee. You can see her wheels. If you watch the video, you can see where she tries to turn, and then her car is quite literally veering towards the right. And then a third ICE agent, a man who was in front of the vehicle, drew his pistol. He walked toward her car. He pressed himself against the front bumper. He reached across the hood, and then he fired 3 to 4 shots through the side of the car, point blank into her face. And I want you to read an eyewitness account from a woman named Emily Heller, who lives in the neighborhood. She told Minnesota Public Radio exactly what she saw. His midriff was on her bumper. He positioned himself in front of a car that was trying to leave, and then used that position to justify shooting the driver in the face. Quote, "She was trying to turn around, and the ICE agent was in front of her car, and he pulled out a gun and put it in, like, his midriff was on her bumper. And then he reached across the hood of the car and shot her in the face like 3-4 times. The car then rolled forward because, the driver had just been shot in the head and crashed into a light pole and then parked vehicles about 100 feet down the road." Another resident, Venus DeMars, described watching paramedics perform CPR on a woman collapsed next to a snowbank near the crash car. The ambulance drove away without turning on its sirens because there was no emergency anymore because Renee Nicole Good was already dead. And I need to tell you also about another video that emerged later in the afternoon. And this one is harder to process than the shooting itself in some ways because it's not violence, it's grief. It's raw, unfiltered reality of what violence leaves behind. After the shooting, someone, and we don't know who as of the time of this recording, filmed Renee's wife. She's sitting on the snow. She's covered in blood. Her wife's blood, by the way. She has her dog with her, and she's in shock, like complete, profound shock. And she's saying through sobs, through sobbing, unable to breathe, barely able to breathe, "They killed my wife. I don't know what to do." We stopped to videotape, and they shot her in the head. We have a 6-year-old at school. We're new here. I need you to sit with that for a moment. I need you to actually hear what she's saying. We stopped to videotape and they shot her in the head. That's what happened. That's what actually happened. In the words of someone who watched it happen to the person she loved most in the world. They stopped to document ICE activity, a completely legal thing to do, by the way, a constitutionally protected thing to do, the exact kind of citizen oversight that the First Amendment exists to protect, and an agent shot her wife in the head. There's a child, a first grader, probably, a kid who went to school that morning thinking it was a normal Wednesday, a kid who was sitting in class learning to read or do simple math or playing with friends while their mother was bleeding out on a Minneapolis street, a kid waiting to be picked up, a kid who will never see their mother again. They just moved to Minneapolis. They were just starting their lives there. They probably had plans, dreams, a future that they were building together. Maybe they moved for a job. Maybe they moved to be closer to family. Maybe they just wanted to change the scenery. And it all ended in 30 seconds on a snowy street in Minneapolis because an ICE agent decided to fire his weapon into an unarmed woman's face. In another video, you can see what appears to be the same woman, wearing the same clothes, leaning over a body in the driver's seat of the crashed SUV. You can see blood, and you can see what this cost. And here's what really breaks me. While this woman was sitting in the snow, in shock, covered in her wife's blood, not even fully processing what had happened, the federal government was already crafting the narrative that would call her wife a terrorist. Before the blood was even dry, before the body was cold, they were already spinning it. Now I need to spend some serious time on the response from the Trump administration, because the lies that they are telling are not just offensive, they're dangerous. They're designed to manufacture consent for murder, and they reveal, guys, with crystalline clarity exactly how this administration operates. Within hours of the shooting, before any real investigation could have been conducted, before all the witnesses had even been interviewed, before anyone had done anything even remotely resembling due diligence in this situation, the Department of Homeland Security had already constructed a complete narrative. I mean, it's almost impressive in a sociopathic way, the efficiency of this administration's propaganda machine. Here's what DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin posted on social media. I'm going to read it because I want you to understand exactly what they're claiming and exactly how full of shit it is. She said that ICE officers were, quote, conducting targeted operations when, quote, rioters began blocking ICE officers. She claimed that one person weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them. And she said that an ICE officer, fearing for his life, the lives of his fellow law enforcement, and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. And then, because, they apparently believe we're all complete fucking idiots, she called it an act of domestic terrorism. So let's break this down, because let's do a little fact checking, since apparently no one in the mainstream media has the balls to do it at this point. Renee Nicole Good was not a rioter. She was in a car by herself, according to her wife. They had stopped to videotape. There's no evidence that she was part of any organized protest. There's no evidence that she was blocking anything intentionally. The police chief himself, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, said that there was nothing to indicate that this woman was the target of any law enforcement investigation. But rioter sounds scary, doesn't it? It sounds like she was violent. It sounds like she was threatening. It sounds like she just had it coming. That's the point. Now, in terms of the claim of she weaponized her vehicle, watch the video right now. Pause this podcast and watch the video. I will wait. The car backs up. It begins to turn. It's trying to leave. And at no point does the vehicle accelerate directly toward any officer. At no point does it swerve toward anyone. At no point is any agent in danger from the vehicle's movement. You can legitimately see how she's trying to turn off to the right, and the ICE agents are literally coming after her from the front left corner and the left side. Attempting to, the claim of attempting to run over law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them. This is the biggest lie. And it's really worth examining because it reveals how this all works, right? You just watch the video, I assume. The agent who fired was in front of the car. He walked toward it. He pressed himself up against the bumper, and he positioned himself there deliberately. The car was not charging him. The car was not trying to hit him. He put himself in that position as she was trying to turn away from them, and then he used that as justification to fire. This is a technique, by the way. It's been documented in multiple police shootings. An officer positions themselves in front of a vehicle, the vehicle moves, and then suddenly it's, oh, the suspect tried to run me over. It's a way to manufacture justification for lethal force after the fact. He shot through the windshield, the side of the car, into her face and head while she was trying to flee. That's execution. That's not defense. When you're defending yourself, you try to get out of danger. You move, you take cover, you create distance. You don't walk toward a vehicle, press yourself up against the bumper, and then fire multiple rounds into the driver's head. They're calling a woman who stopped to film federal agents a domestic terrorist. Let that really penetrate, y'all. In the official view of the United States government, documenting federal agents is now terrorism. We've already seen I've seen dozens at this point since the shitbag administration has taken office, of people literally just filming, standing on a sidewalk, watching ICE arrest someone or, beat on someone's car or whatever. They're just standing there filming with their phones, and I've seen ICE pepper spray and or attack them. You've all seen it too. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time and trying to leave, or merely just recording an ICE agent, is apparently now terrorism. When you call someone a terrorist, you're saying that they deserve whatever happens to them. You're saying that normal rules don't apply here. You're saying that their death isn't just acceptable, it's righteous, it's necessary. They called a dead mother a terrorist who did nothing, other than document and then try to leave as ICE agents were being the gang that they are. And then Trump got on Truth Social, his sad little safe space, and made it worse. Because of course he did. He claimed he had just viewed the clip. He called the dead woman's grieving widow obviously a professional agitator. He said the driver had violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer. He claimed the officer was recovering in the hospital. And he blamed the radical left movement of violence and hate. Every single claim that he made is contradicted by video evidence. That car did not viciously run over anyone. No officer was run over. The video shows the car backing away, not accelerating forward toward the agent. The agent positioned himself in front of a moving vehicle and then fired. And calling the grieving widow a professional agitator, a woman sitting on the snow in shock with her dog covered in her dead wife's blood, saying, "I don't know what to do." That's who the president of the United States decided to smear. A woman in the worst moment of her entire life who just watched her wife, her loved one, be executed in front of her. That's what we're dealing with. This is the level of contempt that the right has for truth. And by the right, I'm talking specifically in this instance about this administration. This is how confident that they are that their base will believe literally anything they say, no matter what the evidence shows. Because their base will. That's the really horrifying part behind all of this. Millions of people will read that Truth Social post and believe every single word of it. And they will never watch the video, or they'll watch it and somehow convince themselves that they are seeing something different than literally everyone else. That is a shared psychotic break. The local response to this killing was immediate and furious. And let's talk about what Minneapolis and Minnesota officials said, because it's in sharp contrast to the federal gaslighting operation that we're now seeing on that side. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey held a press conference yesterday afternoon, and Mayor Frey, to his eternal credit, did not hold back. He did not equivocate. He did not do the mealy-mouthed both sides thing that so many Democrats reflexively fall into. He said, and I'm quoting directly, quote, "They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everyone directly, that is bullshit." The mayor of Minneapolis stood at a podium on live television and said bullshit. And I cannot tell you how refreshing that is. I am not a fan of Gavin Newsom or a lot of politicians, but I can't tell you how refreshing it is to hear an elected official actually call a lie in plain language without hedging on that. A reporter asked him whether the woman was driving her car as a weapon toward the ICE agent, basically parroting the DHS line. And the mayor shut it down. He said that didn't appear to be the case. He said the ICE agent was recklessly using power that resulted in a person's death. And then he said something that made national news, and you've probably already seen it too. He looked directly at the cameras and said, quote, "They are not here to cause safety in the city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. And then I have a message to ICE. Get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Get the fuck out." The mayor of a major American city telling a federal law enforcement agency to get the fuck out, using those exact words on live television. That's where we are, you guys. That's how bad things have gotten. When a mayor has to tell federal agents to leave because their presence is making people less safe. Governor Tim Walz, and I remind you, this man was on the Democratic presidential ticket months ago. He held his own press conference. He had deployed the National Guard on standby to be on standby. He was speaking directly to Minnesotans. And he said, "I feel your anger. I'm angry." He called the shooting totally predictable and totally avoidable. He blamed the Trump administration for creating a chaotic environment with their immigration crackdown. But he also said something strategically important. He said, they want a show. We can't give it to them. He was asking protesters to remain peaceful because he understood the game. This administration wants images of chaos that they can use to justify more violence, more crackdowns, more authoritarianism. We've seen that repeatedly in Portland, Oregon. My God, I lived there. I witnessed it so many times. This administration tries to goad people into violence so that they can have that excuse to put down the boot. Walz responded directly to the DHS propaganda posts, and he wrote, "Don't believe this propaganda machine. The state will ensure there is a full, fair, and expeditious investigation to ensure accountability and justice." And then there was Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. This happened in her district. These are her constituents, her neighbors, and she was, as she put it, beyond outrage. Her statement was, quote, "ICE's actions today were unconscionable and reprehensible. I am beyond outraged that their reckless, callous actions led to the killing of a legal observer in Minneapolis. My heart breaks for the victim's family, who will have to forever live with the pain caused by the Trump administration's reckless and deadly actions." She called it state violence, and she said it was simply indefensible. And on social media, she responded directly to the administration's lies. She said, quote, "You're lying. There was no attempt to run the officer over and no ICE agents appear to be hurt. Get out of our city." Three different officials, mayor, governor, and congresswoman, all saying the same thing, that the federal government is lying. They saw the video and what happened was wrong. And yet this administration continues to claim self-defense because shamelessness is this administration's superpower. And let's talk about something else deeply unpleasant right now, because it's not enough to just document what the government says. We need to examine the people who believe it, you guys. The ones who actively choose to believe it, who desperately want to believe it. I made a mistake this morning. And I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. I knew it was a mistake while I was doing it. I knew it was against every instinct of self-preservation that I had. I went looking to see, and so I could see conservative media coverage of the shooting. I looked at Fox News. I looked at Newsmax. I looked at the right-wing cesspool of Twitter. I'm sorry, X. As if rebranding makes it less of a hell site now. I looked at Truth Social. I looked at the comment sections. And I'm not going to lie, I may need to be committed, because looking at the comment sections on stories like these quite literally is an act of self-harm. And I found exactly what I was expecting to find. People cheering. People saying she got what she deserved. People deploying the most sociopathic cliches in the MAGA playbook. The "she fucked around and found out," "one less liberal," "play stupid games, win stupid prizes." People calling her a terrorist, a rioter, an Antifa agitator, a communist, a Marxist, just throwing out every single scary word they know, like some kind of ideological word salad. And the amount of people thanking ICE agent, that particular one, for his service. Thanking him for shooting an unarmed woman in the face. Some of them clearly hadn't watched the video. They were just reacting to the framing. Woman tries to run over ICE agents, gets shot. And accepting that framing without question. The headline told them what to think, and it's from the whatever media outlet of their choosing is. And so they bought it. But some of them had watched the video. They saw what I saw. They saw a woman get shot in the face while trying to drive away, and they watched her die. And they still defended it. I find myself, and I don't know if any of you guys are like this, morbidly fascinated by this, in almost like an anthropological sort of way. What is the psychological mechanism that allows a person to watch a murder and cheer? And I think the answer is pretty simple here, to be honest with you. But if I have any psychologist, psychiatrist, or anyone who has studied this, who wants to provide an answer, info@wesawthedevil.com, please let me know, because I will never understand it. If once you strip away all of the rationalizations, they have been taught to see certain people as not fully human. Whether it's women, whether it's people of color, whether it's members of the LGBTQ plus community, they've been taught to not see them as equals to them. That's the whole game, right? Like, that's what all the propaganda is for. You spend years, decades teaching people that immigrants are animals, that liberals are traitors, that Democrats are all pedophiles, that anyone who opposes you is fundamentally evil, that you're the righteous one with the righteous beliefs. You dehumanize them. You other them. You make them into abstractions, into symbols, into the enemy. And once someone is the enemy, once they're not really people anymore, you can do anything to them. You can separate their families, you can put them into cages, you can shoot them in the face while they try to drive away. And it's not murder because, in their eyes and with the people who believe what they believe, that's pest control. This is not a new phenomenon. This is what every single authoritarian movement in history has done. The specific targets change, right? But the mechanism is always the same: dehumanize, demonize, destroy. And these people, these MAGA diehard faithful, these Trump worshipers, they've bought in completely. They have traded their humanity for the warm, fuzzy feeling of belonging to a tribe. They've surrendered any capacity for independent moral reasoning. You know, they're in the exchange for security of always knowing who to hate. And if one thing is for certain with the Trump administration, we always have someone to hate. He's always providing a new person, whatever it is, immigrant, woman, Democrat, whatever. He's always giving his base someone to hate. And I want to speak directly to those people for a moment. And I know some of them are listening, hate listening maybe, waiting for someone that can, waiting for something that they can take out of context, because I've had that happen to me already many, many times. Let me be very clear. You are not patriots. Patriots don't cheer when the government kills citizens. You're not pro-life because pro-life people don't celebrate death. You're not defenders of freedom. Defenders of freedom don't applaud when unarmed people are executed for trying to leave a confrontation. You're sure as shit not Christians, despite what you tell yourselves and convince yourselves. Christ said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, not blessed are the ICE agents who shoot people in the fucking face." You are cultists. You are followers of a man who wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. But somehow, he's convinced you that your neighbors, your next door neighbors, are your enemies. You have been radicalized. You have been weaponized, and you don't even see it. And the truly tragic thing here, the thing that actually keeps me up at night if I let it, is that you could step out of it at any time. The door isn't locked, y'all. You could watch that video and see a human being executed. You can see that human being dying. You could feel something. You could change. But you won't. Because changing would mean admitting that you were wrong. And for some people, being wrong is more terrifying than being complicit in murder. And for the life of me, I don't understand it. But let's put this into broader context, shall we? Because this killing, as horrific as it is, did not happen in isolation. I mentioned that earlier. It is part of the pattern, and it is a well-documented pattern of violence and impunity. The Trace, which is a news organization that specifically investigates gun violence, has been tracking federal agent shootings. And the numbers are staggering. Since January of last year, federal agents have shot people at least 14 times. That's 14 shootings in roughly 12 months. And at least 4 of those people have been killed. This isn't an anomaly. This isn't one bad apple. This is systemic, and this is what ICE does. Multiple times, officers have shot at people observing ICE raids. Multiple times. Multiple times, they've shot at people attempting to drive away from confrontations. This exact scenario. Agent claims vehicle was a threat. Agent opens fire. That has played out over and over and over. And the really infuriating part is that almost none of these incidents have resulted in any accountability whatsoever. Almost none of them have resulted in charges against the officers involved. The government's playbook is always the same. It's like they're working from a damn script. Step 1, agent shoots someone. Step 2, claim the victim was using a vehicle as a weapon. Step 3, claim the agent feared for their life. Step 4, call it self-defense. And then step 5, rely on that fact that the federal agents are difficult to prosecute and that most people will accept the official government narrative. It works almost every time, because who's going to contradict them? The victim is often dead. And even when there are witnesses, the government itself has more resources, more lawyers, more everything. And, when these cases actually do go to court, when someone with resources does push back, the government's claims fall the fuck apart. Just last month, a federal judge in Los Angeles dismissed charges against a TikToker who ICE claimed had endangered agents with a vehicle. The judge looked at the actual evidence and said, no, that's not what happened. A judge in another case threw out charges against two people accused of ramming vehicles into agents. Again, the evidence, which was captured on video, turned out to be bullshit and didn't support the government's narrative. ICE agents shoot people. The government claims the victim was the aggressor. And when anyone actually scrutinizes the claims, they all turn out to be bullshit. The difference this time is that we have video. Multiple angles of video shot by multiple witnesses. We have eyewitness accounts that all tell the same story. We have the mayor of the city calling the self-defense claim bullshit. We have the governor saying it was totally avoidable. The question, and in my opinion, the only question that matters right now, is whether that will be enough. Whether video evidence and eyewitness testimony and official denunciations will be enough to overcome the impunity that ICE has so far enjoyed. I honestly have no idea what the answer is, but I know if there's no accountability this time, there will never be accountability. And ICE will know that they can do absolutely anything, and there will come a point in time where that person could be you. And let's talk about the law, because there is an important question that a lot of people are asking, which is, can anything actually be done? Can this ICE agent be held accountable? Or do federal agents just have some sort of unlimited immunity like we're seeing? Now, the answer may surprise you if you've been conditioned to believe that the government is all powerful. Is yes. State prosecutors absolutely can charge federal officers with murder. Federal immunity is not some magical shield. David Dayen at the American Prospect published an excellent piece today, and I highly, highly, highly recommend. Again, it's on the supremacist. Again, it's called The American Prospect. The author is David Dayen, and he walks through the legal history. And I think that that's worth understanding because, knowledge is power and all that shit, but it's fascinating kind of in a morbid way. The Supremacy Clause of the Constitution does give federal officials some protections from state laws. That's true. But, and this is crucial, those protections only apply when federal officials are reasonably acting within the bounds of their lawful federal duties. Shooting an unarmed person in the face who's trying to flee is not a lawful federal duty. Using unreasonable force is not protected. If an agent exceeds the bounds of their authority, state law applies to them just like it applies to everyone else. And there is actual precedent for this. States have indicted, and not only indicted, but charged and arrested federal law enforcement officers for conduct that exceeded those official duties. It's happened throughout American history. In Virginia in 1898, state prosecutors charged a federal tax collector posse with shooting and killing horses and cattle during a shootout. In multiple cases in the early 1900s, Castle v. Lewis, judges allowed murder cases against federal officers to go forward because the evidence showed unreasonable use of force. And then most recently, states have prosecuted federal officers for homicide. Idaho prosecutors charged a FBI sniper with killing the unarmed wife of Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge. Look that up. Ruby Ridge is fascinating. Santa Clara County in California successfully prosecuted a postal worker who killed a cyclist. Virginia just recently prosecuted a U.S. Park police officer who shot a man to death. And here's the most relevant precedent for Minneapolis: Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin was law enforcement officer with Minneapolis who killed George Floyd on camera. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison charged him with murder, and a jury convicted him. He's in prison right now. From what I hear, not doing so hot. Rest in piss. If the state of Minnesota could charge and convict Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd, they can charge this ICE agent for murder of Renee Nicole Good. The legal mechanism exists, and the precedent exists as well. The only question here whatsoever is whether there's political will. And I'm just going to be honest and realistic for a moment. If Minnesota charges this ICE agent, the Trump administration will lose their collective shit. They'll try to move the case to federal court. They'll claim federal immunity. They'll retaliate against Minnesota in every single way that they can think of. They'll probably try to withhold some type or every type of funding. They'll send more agents, and they will make Minnesota's life complete hell. But my counter argument is that they are already making Minnesota's life hell. That's why 2,000 agents are there in the first place. They've already started, pulling funding. They've already sent their jackbooted pieces of shit thugs, and they've already called Minnesotans garbage. What else are they going to do? Be slightly more fascist? Like, at some point, you have to draw the line. You have to say, this is too far. You have to enforce your laws, even when it's politically costly. Because if you don't, if you let the federal government murder your citizens with impunity, you have already surrendered. And I know that I've mentioned George Floyd several times so far, and I want to spend just at least a minute really examining that parallel because it's not just symbolic. It's geographical, it's political, it's directly relevant to what could potentially happen in this country next. As I mentioned in the beginning, Renee Nicole Good was killed about a mile from where George Floyd was murdered. Same city, same kind of neighborhood, same goddamn story of law enforcement violence captured on video. We've already talked about this. When Derek Chauvin knelt down on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, George called for his mother, and bystanders begged the cop to stop. The world watched this happen. The video went viral. People took to the streets. Cities across America, cities across the world, everyone erupted in protest. It was one of the largest mass mobilizations in American history. Fact. And something happened that doesn't usually happen in cases of police violence. The officer was actually charged. He was tried. He was convicted. Derek Chauvin is in prison right now for murder. And that didn't happen because the legal system suddenly became fair. It didn't happen because prosecutors had some sort of, change of heart. It didn't happen because justice spontaneously emerged in either case. It happened because of public pressure. Because millions of people around the world demanded it. Because the video evidence was so overwhelming and the public outcry was so sustained for so long that prosecutors and judges could not look away and just sweep it under the rug. They couldn't pretend that it didn't happen. They couldn't gaslight more than America. They couldn't gaslight the world. They could barely gaslight the country, but apparently America is very susceptible to gaslighting because look around. But they couldn't gaslight the world. You guys, the same thing needs to happen right now. We have video of Renee Nicole Good's killing, multiple angles. We have eyewitness testimony that corroborates the video. We have the victim's family speaking out. We have local officials, the mayor, the governor, the congresswoman, all saying the federal account is false. What we need is pressure, that same kind of sustained public attention, that demand for accountability that doesn't go away after just a week. Governor Walz asked protesters to remain peaceful. He said the Trump administration wants a show. And hell yeah, he's right about that. They would love nothing more than images of violence that they can use to justify more crackdowns. Maybe even the Insurrection Act. I personally think that that is where we are headed. I think that they are trying to go that out of us to invoke the Insurrection Act. And I think Trump's already stated it. He stated it again this week. He wants to cancel the midterm elections. But he also acknowledged that Governor Walz, I'm talking about, Governor Walz also acknowledged that people have the right to peacefully demonstrate. And that's exactly what happened after George Floyd. Millions of people marched. The vast majority were peaceful, and then they changed history because of it. And the question here, in my opinion, is whether we can do that again, whether we have the capacity to sustain attention. We live in an age designed to fragment our focus into a million different directions. Can we make it politically impossible to let this agent walk free? I don't know the answer to that because I honestly do not understand what is going on in our country right now in terms of what people are thinking. But I do know if this does not become the moment, then I truly personally believe that we have reached a place far too late. And the next thing, and one of the last things I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about who Renee Nicole Good actually was as a person. A lot of people, family, friends, and people who knew her have come forward and shared stories of her, and I would like to cover that. She was a person. She was a human being. The government is trying to turn her death into an abstraction, a rioter, a terrorist, a symbol of leftist. I've even seen people call it leftist lesbian violence that justifies state murder. She wasn't any of those things. She very much was a gay woman and she was a person, but she deserves to be remembered as one. She was 37 years old and she was originally from Colorado. She'd recently moved to the Minneapolis area with her wife and their 6-year-old child. They were building a life together, starting fresh, and they were new to the community. Her mother described her as one of the kindest people I've ever known. She said Renee was extremely compassionate and had taken care of people all her life. She was loving, forgiving, and affectionate, she said. That's not an agitator, not a terrorist, not a caretaker. She was a caretaker, someone who spent her life looking after other people. By all accounts of everyone who's spoken out about her, they quite literally paint her as a saint. Renee had previously been married to a man named Timmy Ray Mackin, and he died in 2023 at the age of 36. Her son, the 6-year-old, was from that marriage. So she had already experienced loss, profound loss, so she knew what grief felt like. And she had rebuilt. She'd found love again. She'd made a new family. She'd moved to a new city to start a new chapter. And all of that ended on Wednesday morning in Minneapolis because she stopped to film federal agents. The Minneapolis City Council issued a statement after her death and said, Renee was a resident of our city who was out caring for her neighbors this morning, and her life was taken today at the hands of the federal government. Anyone who kills someone in our city deserves to be arrested, investigated, and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Caring for her neighbors. That's what she was doing. At the vigil Wednesday night, thousands of people gathered in her neighborhood. One speaker, Jailani Hussein, said that she was peaceful. She did the right thing. She died because she loved her neighbors. Those agents terrorized neighborhoods, separated families, spread fear, shot an unarmed woman in the head 3 times, and then they called her the terrorist. Who are the terrorists here, y'all? Who is actually spreading terror across this country? The answer here is literally could not be more plain. It could not be more plain to see to anyone who has eyes or a half-functioning brain. By Wednesday evening, thousands of people had gathered in Minneapolis at the scene of the shooting, in the streets, at various vigils across the city. They came despite the cold, and if you're new here, Minneapolis in January is brutally cold. Brutally. They came despite the snow. They came despite the presence of federal agents who had just killed someone in that very neighborhood hours earlier. They came because they understood what happened. They came because they refused to accept it. They came because showing up is what you do when your government murders someone. The scene at the vigil was powerful. I cried when I watched it earlier on Twitter. People held candles, signs, they chanted shame, 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 and ICE out of Minnesota. Some protesters encountered heavily armed federal agents wearing gas masks, because of course they did, because this administration's response to people mourning a woman they killed is to deploy more force. And in some cases, those agents fired chemical munitions at demonstrators. They gassed people at a fucking vigil. Let that sink in. A grieving community gathered to mourn a murdered woman, and the federal government tear gassed them. But the protesters didn't give the confrontation that they wanted. They stayed peaceful. They mourned, they demanded justice, and they refused to be provoked. And thank God. You know, one of the things that struck me reading accounts from this vigil was how many people talked about community, about neighbors, about that simple idea that we are supposed to take care of each other. And I don't know about you, but it is a common thing that my friends and I talk about how calloused and cold people are being now. Like they simply just do not care anymore. Renee Good died because she stopped to document what was happening to her neighbors. She wasn't an activist. She wasn't a professional protester or agitator. She she was just a person who saw something wrong and wanted to bear witness to it. And the people who gathered Wednesday night, they were doing the same thing, bearing witness, saying, "We saw what you did. We know what happened. We will not forget, and we will not be silent." Protests last night broke out in other cities too. People across the country were watching. They were angry. They were refusing to let this get memory hold like they're trying to. And this is what democracy actually looks like, you guys. Not the government's version, not 2,000 armed agents terrorizing a community. The people's version, like citizens gathering peacefully to demand accountability from elected officials, to insist that, hey, our lives matter, to say that Renee Nicole Good's life mattered. And I know I've been talking a lot about Renee and who she was and what happened, but I want to talk about what ICE has become under this administration. Because this killing is not an aberration. It's the logical endpoint of everything that this agency has been doing. It's the destination the train has been heading towards for years. ICE was created in 2003. It was created in the panic after 9/11. It was basically carved out of the old immigration and naturalization services as part of, if you recall, that massive expansion of Homeland Security powers. From the very beginning, ICE was designed to operate with minimal oversight and maximum aggression. But what ICE has become under Trump is something qualitatively different. It's become an occupying force. It has quite literally become an army deployed against American citizens and communities. It's a tool also now that we are seeing being, Trump is wielding it as a tool of political retribution. I mean, look at what they've done. They've conducted raids at courthouses, making immigrants afraid to show up for their own legal proceedings. Guys, they have arrested people. And this is what I fucking love about Republicans, and not all of them, obviously, but the right wing, is they're like, become a citizen, or you're not a citizen. ICE is arresting people who are going through the legal pipeline, who show up at court to continue, becoming to court hearings for becoming an American citizen. They're literally arresting them after they're already here going through the pipeline legally. But you don't give a shit about that. Let's just be fucking honest. You guys are happy with ICE because they are trying to take away brown people. That's it. That is literally it. I don't think, it's okay that we brought South Africans here. It's okay that we brought other people here. As long as they have the right skin color, you don't care where they come from. Be honest about that. They've pepper sprayed a sitting state legislator. They've detained people in conditions that constitute torture by any reasonable definition. They've arrested people at hospitals, at churches, at schools. They've separated families, including taking children from their parents and then losing those children in the system. And don't think I'm not pissed at you, Barack Obama, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, because you guys, your administration has participated in those programs too. So sorry, Democrats, you guys aren't completely off the hook either. But guys, they brandished weapons at journalists and legal observers. And then now they've killed someone on camera in broad daylight, and they call it terrorism. Terrorism, but also heroism if you're the ICE agent. This is what happens when you give an agency unlimited power, unlimited resources, and then send a clear message that there will never be accountability, because that's what we're seeing. The Trump administration allocated $75 billion for ICE over the next 4 years. $75 billion. That makes ICE the most well-funded law enforcement agency in the country. Their budget exceeds the military budgets of most countries in the world. Let's sit and spin on that one. More money than most nations spend on their entire military. We get one agency to terrorize immigrant communities, to flood cities with agents, and to shoot unarmed women in the face. This is policy, this is deliberate, and this is what they want. And it's worth asking, and I don't know if a lot of you, I've been talking to a lot of my friends tonight because this really destroyed me. And we've all been talking, and I have a lot of friends who are ex-military. I have some conservative friends as well who, the only people that I will keep in my life right now are people who are disgusted as I am with what's going on in the world. But I have a handful of conservative friends and talk to about this, and everyone has the same sinking feeling. And I don't know if you guys are feeling it too, but we're all feeling that something big is coming, like something big. We don't know what it is. We have no idea what form it'll take, but we just have this sinking, gut-wrenching feeling that something big is coming. And if you add that to the fact that apparently now you can shoot a woman for filming you in the face, jump in front of her car and then, film her, you know what I mean. Where's the limit with this? Because seemingly as of right now, there isn't one. And I think the only limit is that we have to make them stop. And if we don't make them stop, they won't. I said at the top of this episode that I hope that this is a wake-up call for this country. And I sincerely mean that with every single fiber of my being. And I want to explain what I mean by that, because I think the stakes are higher than people realize. This country has been sliding towards something very dark for a very long time. We've watched norms erode. We've watched laws be ignored. We've watched federal agencies weaponized against political enemies. We've watched the courts packed with ideologues. And we've watched the media surrender to access and fear. I mean, if you look at our media, look at CBS. Look at CBS and what CBS has been saying for, since this new administration took power versus how they even were a year and a half ago. Completely different. Everyone has had to fall in line. And at every step, there have been people saying, surely this is too far. First it was Trump mocking the disabled reporter. No, first it was the bad hombre. Then it was Trump mocking the disabled reporter. So much heinous shit has been happening. Surely this will be the thing that shocks people awake. Surely this will be the line that cannot be crossed. We can't do this as a country. We have to set boundaries. And at every single step, we've been proven wrong. That line keeps moving. That bar keeps getting lower. It is in the fucking dirt. What was unthinkable yesterday is just another day. It's Wednesday. Today, what would have caused a constitutional crisis a decade ago doesn't even make the news cycle now. But there are these fleeting moments that make everything crystal clear, that force people to choose sides, that make the abstract concrete, that turn political debates, legitimate political debates, into matters of life and death. George Floyd's murder was one of those moments. The video was undeniable. And I'm so fucking tired of the whataboutisms with George Floyd. Was George Floyd an upstanding citizen? Absolutely not. The man had a criminal record longer than I could even probably read, and he was, by all accounts, not a great human being. But you know what? That video and what happened to him, that was undeniable. That he was murdered. The violence in that video was visceral. And something broke open because people who had never protested anything took to the streets. And then there was a national reckoning, however incomplete, however unfinished. He did not deserve that. And you know what? Renee Nicole Good's murder can be another one of those moments. Not because her death was more tragic than his or anyone else's, not because it was more innocent, but because it was also captured. But because it can't be denied what happened. Because the government's lies about it are so transparent, so disgustingly insulting that they reveal the contempt that these people have for truth itself. We all saw the video. We all saw what happened. There is no ambiguity here. An ICE agent executed a woman for trying to drive away, and then the government called her a terrorist. If this is not a line, if we cannot as a country look at this and say, no, 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 this is too far, this we cannot accept, then there is no line. Then anything is permitted. Every escalation that follows is on us, on our silence, on our passivity, and on our willingness to let it completely slide. Because, guys, we're just at the beginning here. There will be more escalation. There will be more violence. There will be more deaths. The administration has made clear that they see no limits on their power and no need for restraint in any way. The only thing that will stop them is us. And I don't know what it will take for enough people to wake up. I don't know how many bodies have to pile up before this country demands accountability. And I'm not talking about just Republicans. I'm not talking about just the Trump administration. I'm talking about both parties, Democrats and Republicans. Because I know this, every single person who stays silent, every person who looks away, every person who says, we don't have all the facts, when the facts are on fucking video in front of their faces, they are complicit. And I'm seeing a lot of Democrats right now that are absolutely complicit. And every person who cheers on the other side, or just on the other side of the coin, every person who's cheering these deaths, every MAGA loyalist who posts approval, every Republican who stays quiet, every conservative media figure who represents or repeats this self-defense lie, they all have blood on their hands. Not metaphorically either, literally. And what can we actually do? Because I refuse to leave this episode on pure despair. I mean, I'm in a constant state of despair at this point, but I refuse to catalog horrors without discussing some sort of rainbow at the end of the cloud or whatever the fuck. That would just be trauma porn. And I'm part of the reason why I stopped doing true crime podcasts, unless it's something that really impacted me or moved me, is that that's become trauma porn. And I'm not interested in doing that. What we can do, and here's what I'm asking you to do. If there's ever a CTA, please let it be this. First off, do not let them control the narrative. Share the video. Share the video with your Uncle Cletus from Bumfuck. Share the eyewitness accounts. Share the statements from Mayor Frey and Governor Walz and Congresswoman Omar. When people lie, and they will constantly, especially the elite on both sides, correct them, push back, make it socially costly to repeat propaganda. The administration is betting that they can just flood the zone with bullshit, that they can say self defense and domestic terrorism enough times that it just becomes the accepted story. Because, guys, that's what happens. That is absolutely what happens. You know what hasn't been in the news? Epstein. When that was getting super, super, super hot and the pot started boiling, Epstein was going. Have you heard Epstein in the news for the last 24 hours? I haven't. Every single time you see the lie, counter it with truth. It's exhausting, and I know it feels like it doesn't matter, but it does matter. Secondly, support the organizations on the ground. The Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, the community groups that were in that neighborhood before this happened, they were trying to protect their neighbors. They need resources. They need support. They need to know that people outside Minnesota see what's happening and give a damn, you know? And not even if you want to support your own state, do that too. Look up immigrant rights action groups or anybody who could use funding and support, because not only is this administration cutting an insane amount of funding to states that he, you know, gets pissed at or throws a pissy fit over, like a lot of these organizations always need support. If you have money to give it. If you don't have money, look, I get it. We are all ST ruggling right now. Share their work, amplify their voices, share them on social media, attend peaceful demonstrations, and demand accountability. Contact Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison's office. Tell them that you want this ICE agent charged with murder. The law allows it. The evidence supports it. The only thing stopping it is political will. And political will responds to pressure. It has to. It's how that system works. If you live in Minnesota, contact your state representatives. Demand they speak out. Demand they put pressure on the AG's office. If you don't live in Minnesota, contact your representatives anyway. Demand that they condemn what's happening. Demand hearings. Demand investigations. Make this a national issue that politicians and your representatives cannot ignore. Fourth, remember her damn name. Renee Nicole Good. Say it, write it. Don't let her become a statistic to this administration. Don't let her become a footnote in the ongoing horrors here. She was a person, she was kind, she was compassionate, she took care of people, she had a wife who loved her, and she had a child who will now grow up without a mother. Not only that, but her child is now a fucking orphan. She deserves to be remembered as a human being, not as some prop in a political game. And again, I'm going to underline this one with a bold and exclamation point. If there are protests in your area, go. If there are vigils, attend them. If there are community meetings, participate. This is not a moment in our history for just keyboard activism. I get it. I love the internet. It's how I'm communicating with you right now. But physical presence matters. Bodies in the streets matter. It sends a message that they just cannot ignore. I don't know if you guys saw the video tonight of the vigil, downtown Minneapolis, and the thousands and thousands of people attended. Made me cry, obviously, but that's powerful. That's powerful. Governor Walz asked protesters to remain peaceful, and he's right. Like, don't give them the confrontation they want, but show up, be present for your neighbors, be present, and let them see that we see what they are doing and we are watching. And last but not least, you guys, take care of yourselves. This shit is traumatizing. It's designed to be traumatizing. Watching state violence, absorbing all the government lies, fighting against something, it all feels so overwhelming. I don't know about you, but like today was my breaking point. I wish that I didn't care so much about the world that I live in and the politics of it all, because it's too much. Take breaks when you need them. If the world is feeling overwhelming or it's getting too dark, please step away from the news when it becomes just too much. Connect with people who share your values. Remind yourself that you're not insane, that you're not crazy, that what you're seeing is actually happening. This is the world and the country that we're living in. And your horror, guys, your horror, if you're disgusted by this, it's a sign that your moral compass still works. And not only that, but check on your friends, especially any friends that you might have who are immigrants, who are people of color. Anyone who could be directly targeted by these policies, ask them how they're doing. Actually listen to them. Be a resource for them. And again, I'm going to say it with my whole chest. I know this feels endless. It's barely been over a year. And I know that every single day brings some new kind of horror. I know there are moments when you just want to tune out and pretend none of this is happening or just ignore it altogether. When you just want to live your life and just, hope that, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore it, go live my life and hope that this just, passes by eventually. They're counting on that. They're counting on you being too tired, too demoralized, too scared to fight back. Authoritarian movements win when the opposition exhausts itself and gives up. People, when they finally determine that resistance is futile, when they retreat back into their private life and stop coming out and being, publicly demanding accountability, please, 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 please do not give them that victory. We don't know how this story ends. We don't know if there will be accountability for Renee Nicole Good's murder. We don't know if this will be the turning point or another atrocity and just a long series of them. But we get to choose how we respond. We get to choose whether we're the people who looked away or the people who stood up and said, not in our country. And I know which one I want to be. As I said earlier a few minutes ago, thousands of people gathered in Minneapolis tonight. In the cold, in the snow, in a neighborhood still reeling from violence committed by their own government. And it's not even just in Minneapolis. I think most of us who saw that video, who watched, feel the same way. And they all gathered to mourn a woman that most of them had never met. They gathered because they understood what her death means, because they refused to accept it, because they wanted to stand together in the freezing dark and say, this is wrong and we will not be silent about it. And I want to leave you with something that a speaker at the visual said. His name was Noah, and he was responding to the government's claim that Renee Good was a terrorist. And then he said, she wasn't watching the terrorists. She was the one watching them. Think about that. We know who the terrorists are. We watched them on camera today. We watched them shoot an unarmed woman in the head multiple times, and they go on television and call themselves hero and her a terrorist. The government wants us to be afraid. They want us to stay home. They want us to accept this violence as the new norm. They want us to believe that resistance is useless and that the machine is just too powerful, that nothing we do matters. Don't give them what they want. Renee Nicole Good stopped her car because she believed it mattered to bear witness. She believed it mattered to document what power does when it thinks that no one is watching. She was right. It matters. It matters almost more than anything. That act of watching, the act of recording, the act of refusing to let them operate in darkness, that's power. That's resistance. And that's how ordinary people hold the powerful accountable. Renee died doing that. And now it's on us to make sure that her death wasn't for nothing. That's it for today, you guys. This is Red, White, and Bruised. I'm Robin. Rest in power, Renee Nicole Good. You died because you loved your neighbors. May we all have that kind of courage, and may we use it.